This week on Christian World News, the barbarity of ISIS, the Islamic State's latest atrocity, raises an urgent call to action. Plus, Christian ministries gather to show their support for the Jewish state at the first ever Israel summit. And how prayer and education is literally saving kids from a life of garbage. Will the Muslim world turn on the radical ISIS army? Hello, everyone. I'm Wendy Griffith. George Thomas is on assignment. The latest brutality by the Islamic State brought swift and violent action from the Kingdom of Jordan after the jihadis executed a captured Jordanian pilot by burning him alive. King Abdullah ordered the execution of Islamic terrorists and is now pursuing a military campaign to destroy them on the ground. Gary Lane has more.
An ambulance transports the bodies of two al-Qaeda terrorists executed at this prison. The Jordanian government made good on its pledge to kill the terrorist captives if the Islamic State harmed Air Force pilot Maoz el-Qassasbeh. It took the action after a gruesome video appeared on the internet this week, showing the caged Jordanian pilot being burned to death by ISIS militants. The video is too graphic for us to show you, but it sparked outrage and protests throughout the Jordanian kingdom. And this response from President Obama as he met with Jordanian King Abdullah at the White House Tuesday.
It's just one more indication of the viciousness and barbarity of this organization.
ISIS militants captured Qassasbeh after his plane went down during an airstrike in Syria last December. The Jordanians had hoped to exchange the pilot in a swap offered by ISIS. The Islamic State wanted to win the release of this female terrorist. But before the exchange could be arranged, the Jordanians demanded one big condition.
We want to see a proof of life.
But when that gruesome video of the pilot's death by incineration appeared on the internet, the Jordanians knew it was too late for a hostage swap. As a matter of fact, the pilot's death may have actually occurred a month ago, long before exchange talks began. The Jordanian pilot execution video came just days after ISIS released a video showing the beheading of a Japanese Christian journalist.
At some point, this kind of act backfires on a group like ISIS.
The Jordanian government had promised to retaliate by delivering a strong, earth-shaking, and decisive response to their pilot's murder. What isn't known at this time is if the execution of the two al-Qaeda terrorists is it, or a much greater response is yet to come. Gary Lane, CBN News.
CBN News has reported on how ISIS drove Christians out of northern Iraq, forcing them to flee their homes and leave all their possessions. Now those goods are being sold in a special marketplace. According to the Ankawa.com news site, ISIS has created a market called Spoils of Nazareth, which means spoils of Christians. It's in the city of Mosul and displays TVs, refrigerators, freezers, air conditioners, and other items that were taken from Christian homes. The market also sells items stolen from churches in Mosul. Unbelievable. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell brought us those stories about ISIS and Iraqi Christians from Kurdistan last year. Now he's written a book about that experience and the Islamic army known as ISIS. Recently, he joined us from our Jerusalem Bureau to talk about Destination Jerusalem. Chris, why did you write this book now?
Well, there were three reasons, Wendy. The first reason was to tell people about ISIS, how it developed, and what danger it poses not only to Israel and the Middle East, but also to the world. The second reason was to tell people about the awful persecution of Christians going on because of ISIS, but also throughout the whole Middle East. And the third reason was to tell people and how they can prepare for the days ahead. The current days we're living in are very scary, they're dangerous, but they could get even worse. And part of the book deals with how we can get ready for those days.
Chris, this group seemingly came out of nowhere last year. Who is ISIS and what is their ultimate goal?
Well, their ultimate goal, Wendy, is to actually take over the world. And their sort of immediate goal is to set up a caliphate, and that's something they've already done. That's been a dream of Muslims for more than 100 years, so that they would establish what they call a caliphate, which is simply an Islamic empire ruled by Islamic law called Sharia law. So that's their immediate goal. They sprang out of AQI, Al-Qaeda Iraq, And so that's how they got started maybe 10 years or so ago. But really, the roots of it, Wendy, go back to the beginnings of Islam. This is something that Islam wants to do. It wants to literally take over the world, and that's what their plan and that's what their goal is.
Chris, what about the Christians living in northern Iraq and Syria, where ISIS has set up their caliphate? How are they coping?
It's very difficult for them, Wendy, and that was maybe one of the main reasons for writing the book. We had the opportunity to meet with many of these Christians who had been thrown out of their homes that they had lived in for generations, perhaps, or definitely for years. They lost their livelihoods, they lost their possessions. Let me just show you one thing. This is a camouflage New Testament by a man named Fadi, who I met. We talked to him about, he's been put on a hit list by ISIS. He lost nearly everything, and he just broke down weeping when we interviewed him one time, and he gave me this New Testament just as a reminder for me of all the tens of thousands of Christians just like him who have lost everything. They were given 4 choices. They could either convert to Islam, they could pay the Islamic tax called the jizya tax for non-Muslims or infidels, they could leave, or they could die by the sword. Now, given those 4 choices, these are what tens of thousands of Christians have been facing throughout the Middle East, and especially through ISIS. Right now, they're living as refugees in Kurdistan and northern Iraq, and this is something the church in the West needs to know what they're going through, needs to pray for them, needs to speak up on their behalf.
Well, Chris, why are we in the West hearing so little about Christian persecution in the Middle East?
I think part of it is that the Western media doesn't report on it like they should. I have had questions lately from Jewish people who have asked me, Chris, why isn't the Christian church speaking out more about the Christian persecution in the Middle East? I don't have a good answer for that. Actually, ironically, and we talk about that in the book, it's been some Jewish leaders like Round Lauder of the World Jewish Congress who have been speaking up on behalf of Christians here in the Middle East. The reason is because they know, because of the Holocaust, what happens when people remain silent in the face of these kind of atrocities.
How does Jerusalem figure into ISIS in all of this?
Their ultimate goal and destination is Jerusalem, and they would like to see Jerusalem as the capital of their future caliphate. And to do that, they obviously need to destroy the Jewish state. So this is their destination. Also talk about the many destinations that other people have. If you look at Jerusalem, you can think about it as the crossroads of both history and prophecy. For Christians are praying for the peace of Jerusalem like never before. That's mushroomed in the last 10 or 15 years. The Jews always see Jerusalem as their final destination. For thousands of years, they've been praying next year in Jerusalem. And now in the last 150 years, many Jews have come back to this land. In 1967, the city was reunified. So in many ways, we see both Muslims, Jews, and Christians see Jerusalem as their final destination. And of course, here as Christians, we say that this will be the place where Jesus Christ will come back to establish his kingdom. And that's what we're all looking forward to.
Well, Chris, how do we prepare for the dark days ahead? You talked about, these incredibly tumultuous times we're living in. How do we prepare?
The Bible says that we need to watch and pray, and I go through many things, about 10 things to do, biblical injunctions of what we can do. The first thing is to watch and pray. Also to have a kingdom perspective and understand that we can invest not only in this life, but in the next, and invest in eternity.
Chris, we appreciate you. Once again, the book is called Destination Jerusalem. You want to get that. Chris, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Wendy. Great to be with you.
Can't wait to read that. Well, the ISIS atrocity even left its mark on one of America's longest religious traditions. The National Prayer Breakfast brings together religious and government leaders. It's an annual event that's been taking place since 1953. This year, President Obama put aside his planned speech and addressed the dangers of religious fanaticism. Heather Sells reports.
It's a tradition that brings together Republicans, Democrats, world and religious leaders. Some notable guests at this year's National Prayer Breakfast included the Dalai Lama and Ebola survivor Dr. Kent Brantley. It's the first time the president and the Dalai Lama have attended the same public event. China considers the Dalai Lama a threat because of his work to see his native Tibet free from Chinese rule. Jordan's King Abdullah canceled plans to attend the breakfast after the horrific murder of a Jordanian pilot by ISIS militants.
President Obama was expected to focus his speech on the importance of religious freedom around the world. Instead, he spoke about how faith can be distorted and horrific acts done in the name of religion.
From a school in Pakistan
to the streets of Paris, we have seen violence and terror perpetrated by those who profess to stand up for faith, their faith. Profess to stand up for Islam, but in fact are betraying it. We see ISIS, a brutal, vicious death cult that, in the name of religion, carries out unspeakable acts of barbarism.
The president went on to say that we must speak up against those who would misuse religion to justify oppression or violence.
No God condones terror. No grievance justifies the taking of innocent lives or the oppression of those who are weaker or fewer in number. And so as people of faith, we are summoned to push back against those who try to distort our religion, any religion, for their own nihilistic ends.
Mr. Obama made sure to stress that Islam is not the only religion that has inspired violence.
And lest we get on our high horse and think this is unique to some other place, remember that during the Crusades and the Inquisition, people committed terrible deeds in the name of Christ. In our home country, slavery and Jim Crow all too often was justified in the name of Christ.
The president has come under fire from pundits and on social media for that remark, while others say they're still waiting to see a strong U.S. response to ISIS. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Not sure what slavery has to do with ISIS. Religious freedom in Ukraine was a sidebar at the National Prayer Breakfast this year. The White House is weighing whether to give military aid to the war-torn nation. Mission Eurasia, a ministry to the former Soviet Union, hosted a roundtable on how the fighting is stripping religious persecution. Since Russia annexed Crimea and occupied other parts of Ukraine last year, there's been a rise in intolerance toward Christian churches. Pastors and priests have been kidnapped and subjected to harsh interrogations, torture, and even had their churches seized. 2 sons of a Pentecostal pastor and 2 deacons were even taken hostage and shot and killed in a mass grave the next day. Observers say Russia has a religious policy that targets believers who belong to more pro-Ukrainian or pro-Western aligned groups.
Correspondingly, those who are not belonging to the so-called Russian world, for example, Protestants and Catholics, are described as opponents or enemies.
But I believe that your courage and your commitment to religious freedom will ultimately prevail. God still has his hand on the people of Ukraine.
And you can see CBN's reports on the fighting in Ukraine and religious persecution there. Just log on to cbnnews.com. A Chinese Catholic bishop who spent nearly half his life in prison has died. 94-year-old Bishop Cosma Shi-Ensin was imprisoned by the communist regime for more than 40 years. First arrested in 1957, he spent 23 years doing hard labor at a prison camp for refusing to submit to religious oversight by the authorities. His last arrest was in 2001. His relatives and friends never saw him again, and repeated requests about his whereabouts and condition were never answered. The government notified them of his death on January 30th. Coming up, a first-ever summit on how Christian ministries can stand up for Israel.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. 8 years ago, my husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Inside every child is a hero, a a leader, a friend to others, someone who helps out, who does the right thing, who dreams of what they can be, but they still need our help.
What should I do? What should I say? How should I feel?
That's where Superbook comes in. It provides moral and spiritual truths through situations children can relate to, teaching God's Word to the children you love. Join the Superbook DVD Club and receive Superbook's newest episodes as they're available, plus 2 copies to share with others, all for your gift of only $25. Get Superbook today and watch the miracles happen.
Welcome back. Christian and Messianic Jewish believers are concerned about the growing hatred of Jews around the world. So leaders came together at a summit in Colorado with a plan to fight anti-Semitism by standing on Scripture and with the nation of Israel. John Waggy has that story.
As conditions get worse globally for Jews and Christians, the message from the Israel Summit is clear. It's time for those who believe the Bible to stand with Israel.
Here at Resurrection Fellowship, hundreds of Christian and Jewish believers are on hand to witness the launch of a global effort called FIRM, the Fellowship of Israel-Related Ministries.
Jerusalem pastor Wayne Hilsden founded FIRM to be a bulwark against hatred and to bless the world by supporting Israel and the Jewish people. He says it will come with a cost.
Certainly among many in the Islamic world, we, the Sunday people, are viewed as just as bad as the Saturday people. And there may come a day soon when our lives will be at risk because of our commitment to love and bless the Jewish people.
Rabbi Jonathan Bernis says the hatred of Jews is an outgrowth of a fierce spiritual clash between God and Satan.
Folks, we are in a battle. We are facing a very real enemy who is wounded and truly believes that he can stop God's plan from being fulfilled. What's our job? Fulfill the plan.
Anti-Semitism is at its strongest on many college campuses, so the summit is paying special attention to young people. 22-year-old Michael Mistretta has a key role in reaching them with a message that's more spiritual than political.
As a young person, when I think about God, how He forgives me, how He shows me mercy, how much more will He do the same to Israel? How much more will His love endure forever?
The Stand with Israel movement is worldwide, and the people who came to Colorado are from at least a dozen countries and many U.S. states.
Gathering together with others that have the same heart and same mind to see God's purposes fulfilled, to see Israel supported, to see the Jewish people come back to their own Messiah.
Beth Shear says the summit changed her perspective.
Knowing that times are going to be coming where they're not even really going to like us for what we stand for, but that we still need to stand for them and know that our God is for them.
Rabbi Bernis believes that the uniting of Jewish and Gentile leadership can solve many serious problems.
Like the rise of anti-Semitism, the growth of replacement theology, anti-Israel attitudes. We need to deal with this together, and we need to do it now.
John Waggy, CBN News, Loveland, Colorado.
Thanks, John. Coming up, out of the dump and into the classroom, the Christian ministry that's changing lives among the poorest of the poor.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
Hello, I'm Terry Newsom. Did you know there are more than 148 million orphans in the world today? 148 million. But it was 3 little girls that taught me about the plight of orphans. 8 years ago, my husband and I spent nearly a month immersed in the daily activities of a Ukrainian orphanage as we waited to adopt 3 sisters. I saw firsthand the utter loneliness, the pain of rejection, and the overwhelming desire to be loved. That experience changed me forever. And out of it grew a ministry from my heart called Orphans Promise. Today, we're helping orphans and vulnerable children in more than 50 countries worldwide. Thousands of children are now in safe homes. They're being educated, and they're learning life skills. I'm asking you to join with me and become family to these children. Will you call the number on your screen right now? Because every child deserves a chance to be happy.
Pentecost 2015. From the corners of the earth, believers gather in Jerusalem. Walk where Jesus walked. Pray in Gethsemane. Rejoice at the empty tomb. Don't miss messages from over 100 world-renowned speakers and a score of popular worship artists. For more information and to register for the Empowered 21 Global Congress, go to Jerusalem2015.com. This May, Jerusalem.
Welcome back to Christian World News. There's a dump just outside Manila that's home to thousands of children. Along with their parents, they live there, they work there, and they barely scrape out an existence. But one Christian organization is helping some to escape through education and prayer. David Mims tells us more.
It's a little after 4 a.m. Philippine Standard Time. The first garbage truck arrives at the huge Peyote dump site located in Greater Manila. There will be more, almost 500 before the day is over. Next come the small army of human scavengers, looking for anything they can recycle, to earn, if lucky, about 89 Philippine pesos a day, or $2. They face harsh weather, stray animals, disease, flies, toxic substances, and foul odors. One observer described the smell as leaving your garbage out in the sun for a week and sticking your head inside the bag.
Children as young as 3 years of age needed to look for pieces of plastic and metal to sell in the recycling industry. And families are living in makeshift shanties made out of second-hand pieces of wood. There's no running water, no sanitation, and often not even a safe electrical connection. Children quickly learn at a young age that life here is all about survival. Little point really of dreaming of a different life.
But some do with the help of Christian organizations like PCF, the Philippine Community Fund. Its first school, about 10 minutes from the dump, was a dirty, derelict warehouse. Then in 2010, a new school was built out of recycled shipping containers. It now has an enrollment of 800 students.
PCF educates children for 7 hours a day, feeds breakfast and lunch. They earn food rewards for academic achievements and school attendance. And this is sufficient reason to keep them off the dump site and keep them in school.
PCF takes a holistic approach, catering to both the physical and the spiritual needs of the children. Education programs have strong emphasis on values, emotional and physical development.
Our goals are enrollment to employment, and we're just getting the first batch of students from college and university, and they're gaining jobs, and this is enabling them to break the cycle of poverty, not just for themselves, but for their families as well.
Jessa used to be a waste picker, but when she was 7, she enrolled in PCF school. She started ballet as an after-school activity, and in just 5 years, she's performing with the most prestigious ballet company in Manila.
If I'm not in PCF, I will be working in the dump site with my family.
Daily food shortages are common for the families living at the dump, and for most, education is not an option. Even children who attend PCF feel the need to contribute toward the family's income, and thus working after school on the garbage mountain is not uncommon.
PCF recognizes this vulnerability and provides weekly food parcels for the children based on their attendance. We also have extracurricular classes to help the children develop their interests and also keep them away from the dump sites where they may be forced to work.
One engineer said it would take 3,000 trucks a day, 11 years just to move all the garbage that's already here. And new garbage arrives at an estimated 1,200 tons a day. So there will always be a Peyote dump site, and there will always be children to work it. But one by one, through efforts of the PCF school and other Christian groups, children like Jessa are finding their way out. I'm David Mims, CBN News.
Encouraging story. Thank you, David. Well, you can follow Christian World News on Facebook. Simply like our Facebook page and you'll get daily stories about the church around the world right on your newsfeed. We'll be right back. Stay tuned.
Give me that. Bye.
Sure, life is busy, but I found a way to make a huge difference in people's lives. I guess you could say I'm changing the world right here from home. I bring medical supplies and doctors to people in need, and dig wells so that villagers can have clean and safe water to drink. I make it possible to preach the gospel in over 100 countries, including right here in America. And when disaster strikes, I'm there, providing food, thank you, and emergency supplies to give people hope again. Every day, CBN and I are making the world a better place. Here you go. My life is hectic, so I joined CBN through Pledge Express. My bank does all the work, and I know that my gift is being used where it's needed most. So become a CBN partner and join Pledge Express, because you can do a world of good right from where you are. Hi, good morning. Are you ready to get started?
Pat Robertson recently recorded a very special program to answer the question, does God still heal today?
What we're trying to do here, Scott, is to tell people how they can access the power of the living God through Jesus Christ.
Discover the answers and let your faith be encouraged.
And then Jesus spelled out of how we can have healing and how we can have miracles.
In Pat Robertson's latest DVD, Be Healed, you'll learn the biblical basis for healing today, how to exchange anxiety and worry for faith and confidence, the way to pray for your healing and healing for those you love. Plus, meet real people who've experienced the miraculous healing power of God.
The first thing I did was reached out for a lifesaver, and that was God. You know, you can put your trust in medicine, but the ultimate healing is going to have to be God.
Find out the biblical principles that lead to healing in Pat Robertson's latest teaching, Be Healed. Available now.
Finally this week, the Bible certainly commands us to love and serve the poor. But most of us want to make sure that our money is definitely going to help the poor. CBN News talked with some folks who aren't just rescuing the poor, but helping them to become rescuers themselves.
Believers know they're supposed to help the poor, but often feel challenged about how to do that so it has lasting impact. Opportunity International at this event in Washington suggested one of the best ways is to offer microfinancing, especially to women mired in poverty. The organization's been a conduit for almost $9 billion in loans to more than 12 million people across 22 countries. Their CEO, Vicky Esquerra, says they want to do so much more.
We have a goal of creating 20 million jobs by 2020, which will affect 100 million people.
At this lunchtime talk, they laid out why Christians would be wise to use their resources to aid entrepreneurial women in the third world. Esquerra points out they frequently do more with the loans than men might.
Out of every dollar they earn, they reinvest 90% of their income back into their families. So they are really focused on improving not only their lives, but the lives of their children, the health of their communities, and the health of their countries.
The emphasis here is that if you help people develop jobs and businesses, not only does it pull them out of poverty, but it gives them the means to turn around and help others out as well. Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
Thanks, Paul. Always good to see you. Well, thanks so much for joining us. And from all of us here at Christian World News, until next week, goodbye and God bless you.